Hey, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Coffee Shop Chatter, our Miss Controversy. So, Biden, well, before we get started, hey, if you've been here before, and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If this is your first time, hey, ask if you can just hit the subscribe button, like the video, it just push it into the algorithm, and as always, make your comments. Like I said, I do like going back and forth, just hearing what other people think about things. So, Joe Biden, I honestly could say he is trying to sabotage President Trump's tenure. He's literally trying to sabotage him on his way out. As everybody knows, or if you don't know, he's actually given Ukraine the authorization to use the ATACMS, which is the Army's version of long-range missiles. It's not a real long range. If you know what anything about MLRS, that is actually our long range. But he's given them authorization to use it. Prior to, Putin already said, hey, if they use any weapons provided to them, by the U.S., he would take it as a sign of war. He gave no authorization. They fired. So right now, Putin is currently reworking his wording and his documentation for nuclear weapons. But we're going to go ahead and get in this video and see what they got to say about it.
News is breaking that Ukraine fired U.S.-made long-range missiles into Russia earlier today. Now, this comes just 2 days after President Joe Biden lifted his so-called red line against these weapons being used by Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. The timing has raised eyebrows as President-elect Trump has said he seeks a swift end to the Ukraine war. His Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has acknowledged that Russia might keep some of the territory it has occupied as part of any peace settlement.
Meanwhile, Russian leader Vladimir Putin has responded. He announced that he was lowering the threshold for a nuclear strike. Russia had been warning the West for months that if Washington allowed Ukraine to fire US, British and French missiles deep into Russia, Moscow would consider those NATO members to be directly involved in the war in Ukraine. Here with us to unpack this perilous situation is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, a foreign policy and defence expert. Lieutenant Colonel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So just to get us started here with the top lines, so to speak, what do you make of these latest developments? What should we make of them? What is their significance?
This is one of the most puzzling and potentially catastrophic decisions of this 3-year war that the United States has been helping Ukraine wage. I'll just tell you categorically, there is no chance that long-range missiles being able to be used by Ukraine now will have any impact whatsoever on the tactical fight. It will not slow down Russia's advance. It will not help Ukraine have a chance to reverse course. All it will do is potentially escalate this war into drawing in the United States and possibly NATO into a war, and raises for the first time to maybe to the highest level since the fall of 2022, the possibility of nuclear escalation. And it is just, I think, irresponsible of the current administration, even by their own announcements and by their own claims, this is not going to change the outcome of the war. Then why would you want to risk nuclear escalation on the threshold of handing over to an incoming administration that says they want to reach a negotiated settlement to end it?
How would you respond to the argument defenders of this are making? They, I think, are saying, well, we've authorized this action to induce Russia to be more willing to negotiate because they could be damaged by these attacks, not damaged in a way to harm the Russian military or government or stem the actual, change the course of battle, yes, but to make Russia want to end this headache sooner. That's, I think, the argument they're making. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's either the most extraordinary level of naivete or arrogance that's way beyond the pale, and that's really saying something for Washington, D.C. I've seen any number of general officers make that very argument over the last 48 hours or so. And I got to say, have you not paid any attention over the last nearly 3 years of this war, or over the last, say, I don't know, couple of centuries of Russian history? It is beyond ridiculous to suggest that a handful of long-range missiles is somehow going to make Putin change his calculation at this point when everything in the world is on Russia's side. They have the manpower advantages, decisive. They have the defense industrial base advantages that are decisive. They have allies that are really producing lots of ammunition and weapon systems that Russia uses. There is no capacity left on the Ukraine side to even hold on to what they have, much less ever reverse it. So there is no chance that it's going to cause Russia to do that, and it's almost insulting to suggest otherwise.
But if you take the view, which I think you said in your response there, that everything in the world is on Russia's side right now, then does the United States just do nothing and let Russia roll on? I mean, if you take the view that the momentum is with the Russians, the permission to use long-range missiles does not stop or slow that momentum, then what does one do except reconcile oneself to Ukraine's defeat?
See, those who make that kind of argument imply, and that's why I said a minute ago with the arrogance issue, that there's actually a choice to make. This war is practically fundamentally over. The end is already known. The only thing that's a question is how long it's going to drag out, how many more Ukrainian men are going to die, how much more territory will be lost. The most sane, wise, and moral position that the United States could take now is to end this war at the best terms possible at the negotiating table. Ignoring that fact and ignoring that possibility and clinging to this fiction that just one more silver bullet type weapon is going to somehow change Russian actions, all it does is condemn the people that we care about the most, the Ukrainian people, to more suffering and destruction. I think it's reprehensible when people make that argument.
Can we talk to Vladimir Putin when Trump gets into office and structure some kind of peace settlement that does not involve more Ukrainian territory falling into Russian hands? Is that something you think Vladimir Putin could go for?
It's a dicey situation at this time. I'll just tell you, while I'm a big advocate of Trump coming in and doing exactly what he said he would do on the campaign trail, I mean, everybody needs to keep a sober understanding that he's got a weak hand to negotiate with. Trump's a great negotiator and businessman. That's how he made his name. But you also have to have assets to be able to have a good negotiation. And then right now, all the big cards are in Russia's hand, because they can say, no, if you don't give me everything I want. And remember, on June 14th, Putin said that he wanted all 4 of the oblasts that they had annexed. Well, if you look at the map, Ukraine still has some of those positions, especially in the Kherson and the Zaporizhia oblasts. So Putin is saying, you have to give up more territory than I've already taken, or I'll just keep fighting and take everything that I want. That's the problem, is that if we don't negotiate and do something like that can bring this to an end, we may end up losing even more and more people. That's the hard situation that Trump's going to be in.
Yeah,
I take the point about the weak hand. I mean, I think that's a completely plausible argument. I'm just curious, though, I mean, should we then make no effort to strengthen the Ukrainian hand? Because getting back to the point of the long-range missiles, I don't think anyone really thinks that is going to transform the battlefield calculus to such an extent that Ukraine is going to romp to victory. But I think the argument, and Robbie alluded to this earlier, is that it permits the Ukrainians to hold on to the territory that you've mentioned, some in the Kursk region, that would strengthen their hand for negotiation. You don't obviously see it that way, right?
It doesn't. It doesn't strengthen their hand. That's what these generals that I've seen, it just frustrate me to no end, because they claim that it can, but it can't. And if you need any more proof, all you have to do is look at the last 24 months of Russia's long-range missile campaign, to include just 24, or I guess about 48 hours ago was the latest round, where they have near impunity to strike all over the Ukrainian land. Ukraine has very limited air defense, in some places none whatsoever, and Russia is just hitting all of these energy systems, command and control, ammunition depots, etc., at will. And they've been doing it for 2 years. Ukraine has a fraction of the number of missiles if we give them everything that we have into a much, much larger Russian country that has good air defense systems. Apparently, all 6 of the ATACMS that were fired overnight were all shot down, and only one of them apparently hit part of its target. We have no confirmation of that part yet. But you see that Russia has been doing this exact campaign of long-range strikes, and it has never brought Ukraine to its knees by itself. Unless you have a comprehensive situation, long-range missiles, and a coherent and a strong ground force that can also put pressure to bear, this one element will not strengthen anybody's hand. It's just not true.
I know you're a military analyst, not a political pundit, but in trying to process why the Biden administration has now taken this position that, yeah, sure, fire long-range missiles into Russia, I wonder if it's an effort to make things more difficult for Trump out of spite or something to bring about an end to this conflict, because it seems like all of the military advisors, even on our side, are saying that this war can't be reasonably won by Ukraine. Is this a last-ditch effort to complicate peace efforts actually in the region?
Well, I do have some insider information on what some of the people in the Trump world are thinking about this, but I don't have any such access whatsoever to the Biden administration, so I could only speculate. But what I can tell you authoritatively is that it will greatly complicate things for the Trump administration, which I think is a real travesty, because at least in part he was elected because of his stance on ending this Russia-Ukraine war, and a lot of people voted because that's what they want to see too. They don't want to see another forever war that's being supported year after year for no apparent purpose and with no success. And so now here's Trump coming in, and he's again signaling very clearly he's going to do exactly what he said during the campaign. But now all of a sudden, there's a chance that Russia could escalate this before we get in there, especially if they hit something sensitive in any future rounds of strikes.
And you've been warning for weeks, months, years, in fact, on our program and elsewhere that this course of action undertaken by Biden to support militarily the Ukraine resistance to an unlimited degree was going to result in exactly the situation we find ourselves in presently. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you so much for joining us.
So there you have it. Like I said, I personally think this is being done or was done to sabotage President Trump. This is Biden's final FU as he goes out the door. And he still has the rest of his month. He still has December. And he have a portion of January where he can still do a lot of things. Nobody has said anything about this. You don't see the people on The View jumping up and down talking about what he's doing. Joe Biden's he's out of control. And they need to do something to rein him in. And I have an idea what they're going to try to do. They're probably going to find some way to get him to step down so Kamala can come up there and she can be the first Asian American president, female president. But it's going to have a bunch of fucking asterisks behind it, like question marks, everything. And by him doing this, if I look at it this way, if Putin decided to launch some nuclear weapons on Ukraine, what are we going to do? Like, really, what is the U.S. and everyone going to do? Are we going to go over there and try to occupy, send soldiers over there, so now you actually are going to war? Who's to say he's like, hell with it, starting to launch nuclear weapons, because he ain't that far from Alaska. In reality, start launching nuclear weapons into the U.S. And the reason why people vote for Trump, like they said, was people are tired of wars. They're tired of soldiers being sent places. I can tell you, it was to the point I was fucking tired. I like deploying, but it was to the point it becomes draining. Even if you like doing it, because you actually get to go do your job, depending on what your job is. It's draining. It's draining on families. And now you about to Saying, I guarantee you, there are some parents and some soldiers that's worried right now because you have a freaking nut job sitting there at the fucking controls, giving directions and orders to another country, telling them what to do when it was already a threat of what will happen. Hey, if you do this, if you use anybody's long range missiles, we're taking it as an act of war from outsiders, not just from Ukraine. He's taking, so now he's going to look at it as an attack from the US. Why Biden couldn't just sit on his fucking hands and wait until Trump got there and let him deal with him? He already would start talking to these guys already. But you have this idiot in Ukraine who's I don't know why he's still trying to help, because if honestly, if Russia wanted to just steamroll them, he could. So pretty much from this point forth, all the bodies that's going to drop, because I guarantee he's about to put a hurt on him. It's on the Bidens in the U.S. hands. The blood of those people, because I guarantee it ain't gonna be just soldiers. It's gonna be a bunch of innocent people that's gonna get caught up in this. So I mean, as much as I hate to say it, they need to pull out the big hook and snatch Biden out that chair. And I don't even trust Kamala Harris either. I don't trust either of them. I've always said Democrats are freaking warmongers. That's why they had Liz Cheney in there, just like her daddy. Freaking warmongers. Because that weapon system they have was built by Lockheed Martin. And I did a whole thing a while ago on war stocks, on the top 5 stocks that actually gets funded because of wars, based off equipment, fuel, and all this other stuff. So, hey, I don't know. I say I'm glad I'm retired. You can't recall me. I've done my contract. I did 28 and a half years. I'm done. I was like, I'm not participating in these games anymore. So I like to know what you guys think. If you heard about this, what do you think, Putin's response is going to be based off of the directive that Sleepy Joe gave to Ukraine about using our weapons against Russia, using them against them for long range. So, hey, that's all I got. Like I say, hit the comments. Let me know what you think. I'm out of here.